This is Robert Kraft, and I'm your host on SNN.Network. And joining me right now is Sean Krakiwsky. He is the CEO and founder of Nanalysis Scientific Corp. It's a publicly traded company. I got two symbols for you: NSCI on the TSX Venture and NSCI.F on the OTCQX. Sean, thank you for joining me today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks. Thanks for the opportunity to be with you today, Robert.
It's great to have you on, and also thank you for participating in our virtual event that we just had a couple weeks ago. So, for me, it was great. It was my first time hearing the company presentation, so it was great to have you there.
Yeah, no, that was an awesome event. We had some really good feedback from that.
All right, well, that's great to hear. So, for those who may have missed the webcast, and again, this is our first time doing an interview on here, so I'd love to get an overview and history of the company, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. So I founded the company 11 years ago from scratch. The only thing we had was an idea from our chief science officer at that time, Dr. Garrett Leskowitz, who wanted to build a product that was the size of your toaster, but that was a miniaturization of an MRI machine. You know, the big MRI machines that use superconducting magnets, they use liquid helium, liquid nitrogen to keep them cool. So these things weigh more than your car, and they're multi-million-dollar total cost of ownership propositions. So I kind of did the opportunity investigation over 6 months and met a couple of really smart scientists, and one of them was the gentleman I just mentioned, and he was just doing some research down at Caltech after finishing his PhD down there. And after really getting some comfort, I said to him, "Hey, do you want come up to Canada and do a tech startup with me?" And he said, "Yeah, absolutely," and moved him and his wife and his kids up here, and they're now Canadian citizens. And of course, there's all kinds of stuff that happen in between as well, which I'm sure we'll talk about.
Absolutely. So let's dig a little deeper then into since the founding, and I really want to get a better understanding of what makes the company and the technology unique and different compared to some of your peers out there. Because I'm sure others have probably thought about wanting to shrink down the MRI machines because they're huge and expensive.
Yeah.
So what about your technology then is different from some of the others that may have thought about doing something like this?
Yeah, you're totally right. Many companies have tried to do this, and many companies have failed. So there's only 2 companies in the world that have succeeded at miniaturizing this technology and selling it commercially into industry. And that's us and our arch competitor, which is also a similar sized company based out of New Zealand, believe it or not. And so it's extremely difficult to build this type of technology. For one reason, you can't build a miniature MRI with off-the-shelf parts. It's totally impossible. Other types of analytical instruments, like chromatography machines, infrared spectrometers, which are sold in the billions of dollars per year globally, those can all be built with off-the-shelf parts. And when the enabling technology was miniaturized, like the lasers and other optical components, of course, the semiconductor components, which is part of every kind of technology hardware. When they got miniaturized, it was easy to build those instruments, and then the differentiation was only on the software. But with our type of technology, miniaturizing the magnet system is extremely difficult. Like I said, large companies that have tried to buy us have failed at miniaturizing that technology. If I were to compare us to our competitor directly, our one arch competitor, we go by our base model of product that we sell. Our product is over half the size and volume, which is important because it affects the applications we can target and the physical environments that we can go in, like mobile police labs, for example. Smaller is better. Also in manufacturing facilities, like pharmaceutical manufacturing facilities.
So, I also want to know a little bit more about how this works. I mean, my science fiction brain is going like, okay, they bring the smaller MRI machines and they just quickly do the scan on here or here, so how does it exactly work?
Right. And so, our tagline is MRI for industrial applications, right? So we're actually not trying to penetrate the hospital market or the part of the market where you're scanning human beings. So the technology is the same, namely nuclear magnetic resonance imaging, but you're scanning different types of things, like a new drug being developed by Pfizer, or olive oil to see if it's contaminated with cheap soy oil, or bunker fuel on cargo ships to see if it satisfies environmental regulations and if it's going to damage the large engines. So you're scanning the molecules not in human beings per se, but in substances that are used in industry of all different kinds, jet fuel, cosmetics, and so on.
I mean, so what then is the size of your total addressable market? I mean, because we're talking industrials, there's so many different verticals, what's the size of that? And then how is the company then addressing the sales process to get into all those different verticals?
Yeah, so I view our addressable market opportunity as approximately $3 billion per year. And that's because we can target all these different verticals. For us to penetrate that to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars, we're going to have to do that with some pretty strong partners, and we're going to have vertically branded products. Right now, our products are sold as general purpose analyzers. So a typical customer, whether it's at a pharmaceutical company, a food company, a chemical company, an oil refinery, will use our instrument to analyze many different types of things that are important to them. So, so it's sort of a technology kind of branding thing rather than a market branding thing. But our future is to brand products as jet fuel analyzers, olive oil analyzers, bunker fuel analyzers, cannabis analyzers, illicit drug detectors for law enforcement and border security, right? If you have a suspicious white powder, what's in there? This isn't the 80s where you can kind of dip your finger in it and put it on your tongue and say, oh, there's cocaine in that. You do that these days and you'll die. So, they want to know, is there fentanyl in there? Is there methamphetamine in there? And our technology is excellent at doing that. And we're doing that commercially right now, by the way. This isn't some futuristic thing where there's promise that it might be able to do it. We're doing it with real customers today.
Well, and that's actually a really important point that I want to ask, because you're going after this more industrial market. Do you need the same kind of approvals that you normally would, let's say, if you were going after the hospital vertical?
No. We do have some minor regulatory requirements, but they have to do with things like what type of RF power is being emitted from our instrument. And also when it's used in a QA or QC environment, also a manufacturing environment, the regulatory issues have to do with data integrity. So, you couldn't have a user at a pharma company who's testing something out and maybe they make a mistake and they say, oops, I don't like that data, and they want to delete it. So we have to have like security protocols implemented such that there's always a log of data that, if there was an FDA audit or something like that, they could come in and look at all the historical data. So we have those type of regulatory requirements, but we don't have the FDA phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 that you'd have if you were developing a new drug or even developing a medical device. Our space is analytical instruments. It's not really med tech per se, although we do sell to life sciences customers and we are used in life sciences. We have less of a regulatory burden.
I think that was an important distinction to make, because I think people think, even if you say industrial MRI, they still hear MRI. So they're like, okay, well, do they have to get that? So I'm glad that we made that distinction.
Absolutely.
So okay, so the company just reported its fourth quarter and annual 2019 results. What were some of the highlights this last year?
Yeah, so 2019 was very much a transition year for us. At the beginning of the year, we were embroiled in exclusive due diligence with a company that wanted to buy us, a large NASDAQ listed company. Our shareholders and our board and management united around the idea that we didn't want to sell our company. We wanted to remain independent. So that consumed us for quite a bit at the beginning. Then, of course, we took our company public mid-year, and that was exciting for us because it was critical to my M&A strategy. I wanted to have public company currency to be able to spend on buying 5 companies that I've been talking to for years that want to join our consortium, as I call it. So that happened mid-year. We had a very successful financing. It was oversubscribed. We ended up closing on 6.5 million. And so that was sort of mid-year, and then really by fourth quarter we were able to sort of get our business back on track, fully funded. I'm happy to say that if you look in our financials, very strong balance sheet. So a couple of things that stand out is the over 6 million in cash, and also a current ratio of over 5, which is pretty healthy. Sort of some balance sheet metrics there. On the income statement, I think really our gross margins really pop out. So, we've gone from over 60% to over 70% gross margins, and we think we can keep that trend going. So it's a really healthy type of business in that there's not very many competitors. So we don't tend to face a lot of pricing pressure and gross margin contraction that you'd see in other types of businesses. It's well known that analytical instrumentation, lab instrumentation is intrinsically a high margin business.
And I have to ask, and I know you actually covered this on the panel that you were on with Paul Andriola at our virtual event. And I invite everybody to go check out that panel. It was fantastic. And he asked you guys about, the pandemic and how that's affected operations. So I want to reiterate and ask that again here for those who may not have seen that panel yet. So here's the full question. I'll formally ask it: is has the global pandemic impacted operations in any way? And if so, how is the company weathering the storm?
Yeah, it's having incremental impact, but business isn't stopping by any means. Customers continue to place orders. Customers continue to pay us for orders that were fulfilled. We continue to manufacture and ship instruments. We've remained 100% employed. There was no layoffs or anything like that. We are definitely following all the social distancing rules and guidelines, both from our in our office in Europe, where we have 22 people, and our office in Canada, where we have approximately 60 people. And so our health, safety, and environment officer has done a fabulous job of making sure everybody's safe. No positive COVID-19 tests in our company. Everybody's healthy. So we're really happy about that. Like I said, incremental slowdown, call it 15-20% or whatever you want there in terms of business orders being placed. But that business isn't going away. It's just sort of been delayed a little bit. So with our strong balance sheet and with the places starting to reopen, so we don't think we're going to have any problem weathering this storm per se.
And also, what's your background prior to founding Nanalysis? How'd you end up, getting to this point?
For sure, yeah. So by education, I have a master's degree in electrical engineering, but I'm really a business and finance guy. So I've founded 3 technology startups, all in different areas. My first one was in internet software that had to do with wireless location services. My second one was high performance computing. And then I got involved in analytical instruments about 11 years ago. Really, if you look at my pre-business career, I was a hockey player. So my whole life, hockey was a religion for me. I ended up getting drafted by the Los Angeles Kings. And those were the Wayne Gretzky years. So I was able to, practice and have shinny games with Wayne Gretzky. So that was sort of my first life. And then my second life has been a technology startup guy.
All right, well now, okay, this interview just became another 20 minutes because now we have to ask, for those out there, give us your best Wayne Gretzky story. You have to do it. I'm sorry. I know this is for investors, but they got to know. I got to know.
Well, yeah, I mean, he was at his prime of his career when he arrived in LA. And so everybody was in awe of him. He was treated he was treated like a king or a queen on the ice, right? And but I guess I'm one of the few people in the world that can say, he showered with Wayne Gretzky, more than once. So you might think, well, so what? Showering with a king is kind of it's a strange but interesting thing. So I guess that's my sort of, I don't know if that's funny, but it's my best Wayne Gretzky story.
Well, that's good stuff. Well, I mean, were you on the team when you guys went to the Stanley Cup final, or did you join just before or after that?
I played for their #1 farm team.
Oh, okay.
So to use the baseball analogy, I was playing AAA ball. So I almost made the big club, but I never actually quite made it. I was under contract with him for a couple of years. So at training camp, you were with all the veterans, including Wayne.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to break camp in any of the major sports, but hey, similar to microcaps, it's a long road till you get to the big cap anyway, you know. So you've been bred for this.
Absolutely.
All right. So then, from what you can tell us, so what are the 1 to 2 things that investors should look for now moving forward?
Yeah. So I think I'm going to maybe give 3 things. So the first thing is when we announce that we're shipping our new product. We have a huge backlog of sales for this new product that we're referring to our 100 megahertz product. It doesn't render our current 60 megahertz product obsolete. No, they're both going to be in the market. They're differentiated such that they go after different segments of the market opportunity. But it's a really exciting product. It's based on 5 years of market feedback since we've been shipping our first one. It's going to go to big pharma. And a lot of really exciting customers. So when we announce we're actually shipping that commercially, that's the first thing to look for. The second thing to look for is more M&A. So, we've been saying consistently that we have an M&A strategy, and we are in discussions with several companies right now to buy them, one in particular, and the target doesn't know which one they are, but we know which one our priority is. So you should look for us to pull the trigger on our next acquisition, which should be highly accretive. If you look at, say, revenue multiples, and achieving strategic objectives for building out our business. And then the third one is when you start to look mid-year and so on at impact of our first acquisition on our current business, and see that organic growth plus M&A is going to provide a pretty explosive trajectory for our company.
And then where can my audience go and find more information about Nanalysis?
Yeah, so you can find information about our technology and also investor-related information at our website, which is www.nanalysis.com. Nanalysis is just the word analysis with an N in the front.
Sean, thank you so much for joining me today. And again, also thank you for joining us at our virtual event a couple of weeks ago. I really appreciate it. Good luck, stay safe, and I look forward to the next update.
Thanks. It was my pleasure. And thanks for the opportunity, Robert. Have a nice day.
You too.